Cool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of have to stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI. Worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
WESN.
Well, we got word of what the result of the second autopsy was in the death of young Mr. Francois. I'm not entirely sure what to make of magnesium sulfate when looking at all of the other issues that the second autopsy found. Professor Daisley, I mean, it's as much an art as a science. He could see the outcome, but what he saw probably is not covered by the cause of death in the initial autopsy. And it begs two questions. One, to me, this is a little too similar to the cases where men died in the prison, in the custody of the prisons, and you essentially had to rely on a private autopsy to sort it out. You had to rely on a private autopsy, well, potentially to get to the truth. But in those cases, we saw nothing necessarily come from that, go further. But we got very significant differences of opinion. But it does make you wonder, as I said yesterday, the physical differences. It should not just be a subjective difference in opinion. When the second autopsy in the prisoners' cases were looking at multiple blunt force trauma injuries across the body. Now, in this case, it's slightly different. But I don't know if you could... I mean, I don't even know what the actual meaning of the term cyanosis of the extremities, cerebral edema, acute renal injury, secondary to shock, cardiomyopathy, congested loop of the small bowel. One of the daily newspapers breaks it down into more layman's terms: swollen brain, cardiovascular and kidney complications, and other possible causes of his death. Most likely suffered a cardiovascular event which produced cardiogenic shock, acute kidney injury, and brain injury. And his vomit was, during the event, aspirated and died. The initial autopsy may have seen a consequence of his death and basically looked to rubber stamp that as his cause of death. Now, assuming that the second autopsy is correct, both in what it observed and the hypothesis with regards to how it relates to the young boy's death, we have to ask the question, exactly what went wrong with the first autopsy? Is this an indication of the professionalism, capabilities, or integrity of that examiner? And to a wide extent, the medical system? I only know of 3 cases where we've had these 2 competing autopsies. And the cases in all 3 situations, they should be, the second autopsy is pointing to what should be physically evident. So you have to ask why. I am not comfortable with the implications of having to ask why. Okay, so to what extent do we put extra emphasis on this because it's a young boy? And to what extent should we try to treat it with as much objectivity and as little emotion as possible? I don't know. Because ultimately, one of the concerns would be that, 1, death of children is something that should be taken seriously, and 2, if it could happen to him, who else could it happen to? I already have questions on the public health system of adults who have passed away, adults who I don't necessarily know if they should have been considered a normal thing for them to pass away. I'm not talking about people in their 80s or 70s or even 60s. So I understand medical health is complicated, but things like this, I assume it will play out in the courts. I assume potentially the more they try to limit the bad publicity, it will look like a cover-up, and the negative press will detract from the public health system. But we shall wait and see. But the real issue is, will we see consequences? Very few people in this society has faced significant consequences of note. There's one poor young lady way back about 15 years ago, or 12 years ago, 12 to 15 years ago, that she had to change her name after the fallout of that scandal. But that is the exception, not the norm. Meanwhile, to speak about what may be the new normal here in Trinidad and Tobago, 100 days, of course, I started speaking about it yesterday, anticipation. We had a meeting last night where the Prime Minister spoke, and myself and a couple of other people would wish for her to speak more publicly. I don't know if she is that busy of a woman, but we do know someone who is technically also busy in his own right, so much so that he is joining us via Zoom. We have Dr. Shane Mohammed joining us, geopolitical analyst, and I guess you could say to some extent now our resident political talking head. Dr. Mohammed, welcome back to Talking Point.
Good morning. I am very excited for what I'm reading in the papers this morning.
Believe it or not, I actually, not in the way most people would think and the detractors will want to pounce, I just wanted to hear more last night. There were a couple of things that I did make note of and I appreciated, but I'm a little bit cautious because the first go around, I know she said that this is Kamala 2.0, but the first go around, initially when she started firing ministers, I'm like, yes, hold them to account. And then when she reached the double digits, I'm like, something is not right here, and I don't know what it is. So when she's looking to hold ministers to account again, I very much appreciate it. And I especially like that she's being proactive about it. She's not trying to, make everything look pretty and hide all the ugliness and only is saying these things after the scandal comes out into the public. She's taken front. I'm just kind of cautiously optimistic that it's not a situation that might become a runaway train down the line. We don't know exactly who and how many people are on the borderline of temptation.
Well, you see, she said something very important, which is that she's not Kamala 2. Kamala 2.2 is not like Kamala 1. No, Kamala 1. That's important. But she's very specific, Sean. She's very, very, very specific in her speech last night. Liming at Hyatt, liming in some restaurant up in town. People who would never sit at the same table, you are now seen in Port of Spain sitting at those tables. Learn your lessons. There are some people who have not learned from the first go around. And if persons feel that they can push the lady over, then the answer she's saying is no. And it sometimes takes time for leaders to get into office, to give people second chances, this is early, it's 100 days. If in 100 days' time she has had difficulties that the country has not been aware of persons getting sidelined, of loyalists that worked hard with her to getting into government, and they are being treated untoward by certain persons who were beneficial from their hard work to be where they are, then I say let her fire who she needs to fire when the time comes, and let her call names and not a damn dog back thereafter. Because I will say to you, I said it yesterday, I will say it today. If ever a minister, by virtue of the Senate or being a member of Parliament, who was given the opportunity, a very, very, very elite opportunity, to serve alongside the Prime Minister in this dispensation, after she's really and truly, and a lot of us are guilty of it, of wondering whether or not she had the acumen, the gravitas to do it. And now that she has done it, if any one of them has lost their mind and has been consumed by hubris, they need to revert to her inaugural speech, where she was sworn in as Prime Minister, and you should find your grounding back again. You should find your grounding and the understanding of what your mandate is. She said it last night, Trinidad and Tobago is open for business, and if your ministry is one that has the capacity to go out there into the world and find business and foreign direct investors to come into Trinidad and Tobago and set up and create employment and create revenue and create prosperity, then do your job, because that's the job that you've been mandated to do, because it is not business as usual. And whilst she understands that she made promises to the country also has to understand that those promises, she said it, that she's going to ensure that the most vulnerable in this country are taken care of. But it is not going to be taken care of in a way that they have been accustomed to over the years. And she's right again, not in the way that they were accustomed to under her leadership between 2010 and 2015, because some status quos remained, and 10 years after, it has not improved, it has only gotten worse. So if she is like a bulldozer that is going through things that are no longer serving our higher purpose as a people and has become a parasite to the society and the economy, then let her do what she needs to do.
I get the impression from this cabinet, and maybe I'm being overly optimistic. Might be the one time people might call me overly optimistic. Otherwise, I am generally pessimistic across the board when it comes to our political system. But that this cabinet slate, they are less cowboys. They are less random sources of mischievous behavior on this slate than her last cabinet slates, and to some extent, maybe even the last two different PNM cabinets lineups. The comment by John Jeremy, it was very interesting that she seemingly asked him, I don't think we saw his reaction, but she seemingly asked him before she said his statement on how confident or appreciative or impressed he was by her overall cabinet that she put together. It seems like, at the very least this time, there are less people with individual ambitions who might act out, at least in the way we usually see our politicians act out their personal ambitions. And perhaps those who she's speaking to last night, do they run the risk that they might literally be the one or two nails that sticks up and makes themselves very obvious? Because I find it very interesting that she has to say these things publicly. It means that there's an issue there. But when you read the room seems like it should be a more mature room. And I don't know how if everybody's not doing it, how do they think they're going to get away with it? If they're the one or two people that are maybe starting to do the wrong thing.
Because it seems as though that these people have not understood that the country has evolved. And if they have, and she said she's not afraid. And if someone believes that there is a level of intimidation that they can use, some secret that they can use against the Prime Minister, she's at a point that she don't care. And she should not care. And if she is listening to this show today, I agree with her. You should not care. You worked hard. She said it. She worked hard. She worked hard with the loyalists and the grassroots, and there were persons that came forward and worked hard for certain seats to be won in order for her to be able to get into government. And for some of those very persons that she is speaking to become ministers of government and to win seats and to be appointed senators. And you're right, there are the nails that are going to stick out, and it is going to become very obvious to the country, whether if not in the first 100 days, maybe in the second 100 days, or in the third 100 days, but it will come to fruition. And those that claim to be loyal, the test of loyalty would be how hard they work and how much of staying in their lane, keeping their heads down, crafting their language and their narratives, and how much they deliver to the country on behalf of the Prime Minister. I don't care what anybody says, but the Prime Minister is the head of government. Prime Minister is the head of the cabinet. And if I were a Minister of Government under that administration, I would tell the country that I have consulted and I have been directed by the Prime Minister to do X, Y, and Z. I have no problem with that, because at the end of the day, that's who the boss is. And if people don't understand that they're not their own bosses, that she is the boss, then clearly they signed up for the wrong job. Or they're living in La La Land. Or they're living in the world where they were in government in 2010 to 2015. And as she rightfully said, you learned nothing in the last 10 years. You were actually hoping that she failed.
I want to ask about that, because there was a moment where with the TPP, I thought, hey, don't slip now and do something that your political opponents or your predecessors might have done. And right now, I'm looking at how opposition to government has flipped. And there are some situations where I'm like, oh, you're kind of doing what they did. It works both ways to varying degrees. What is it about politicians and maybe it's just because I'm naive, so I think it's a thing. What is it all politicians of kind of falling into some of the same patterns of behavior? Forget things like corruption. I'm talking even just how you, because you said craft messaging, how you craft your messaging. When do you speak and not speak? When do you refrain from speaking? And you know, I understand there's certain things that you can't reveal to the public, but more often than not, it seems like that is used more when I'm embarrassed, so I don't know what to say, rather than, oh no, I can't speak, but I want to speak, but for the good of the country, I can't. And other things like that, where I'm talking about the little things, where you kind of get, they kind of seem to move almost kind of the same, and it's the gateway drugs to then the bigger mistakes.
Well, it's called grandeur of office. It's called hubris. It's called not understanding your audience. It's not understanding your office. And it's very simple that you speak on matters that fall within your portfolio. You speak on matters where you are required to provide the country with critical information so that they are informed. Outside of that, you should not be speaking at all. And no comment is a comment. Not every time a reporter stops you and says to you, Minister or Secretary, as the case may be, X or Y, and you don't have that answer, you don't have to be arrogant about it, you know. It's a simple thing. I don't have the answer for you right now. We're working on that. As soon as I get the information and the answer that is required to effectively answer that question, I will be sure to provide it to you. Another question comes to you, I have no comment to make on that, ask the line minister. I have no comment to make on that, ask the Prime Minister, and carry on with your business. I don't believe that we live in a world where every time that a camera comes in your face, you need to be a star. I don't believe in that. I believe that you need to do the work. Do the work, and it will. The work that you do will shine for you. You will. The results that your job allows or provides is going to put you in the spotlight. And you're going to be remembered for not being a clown or a spectacle, but you're going to be remembered and respected for the work that you did, how you did it, how you delivered it, who you helped, how you helped them, and it will come naturally.
Now, speaking of our messaging, let's go to some specific situations in the first 100 days. Of course, the Stand Your Ground consultation is going on. Now, one of the more interesting parts of that, at least so far to me, unfortunately, Minister Sturge had some very direct statements that seemingly Minister Alexander had to kind of walk back a little bit or kind of redirect. Now, to be fair to Minister Sturge, Karen, off air, we didn't have time to speak about it on air, spoke to me about his statements and said she kind of understood why he would say what he said as a lawyer, and that what he probably intended is not how it came across. Now, the flip side is, in my position, it's like, listen, what you intend and what the general public will probably interpret. If those are two different things, you run the risk of getting yourself into trouble, because it did kind of seemingly go too far for me when he said, hey, if you doubt the police officers in front of you, better to be tried by 6 than tried by 12 than carried by 6. But I'm like, if those are real police, you're probably going to be guaranteeing that you get carried by 6 anyway.
I think one of the things that we need to get right in this country, and Alexander and Sturge and the Attorney General and others are going to have to work very hard to get to ensure, is that even law enforcement officers, there's a quality assurance monitoring and evaluation system. We are operating under this thing, performance appraisal. We need to go back. We need to now step it up to performance management. And I think effective performance management measures and practices are going to keep us in check. We are archaic, and one of the things that we have at our as a benefit of being in government is that 3/5 majority that could bring a lot of reforms in process, procedure, disciplinary actions, keeping people in check, ensuring that rules and regulations are amended and they are stringent enough to be effective enough to ensure that persons who are charged with the responsibility of enforcing the law and protecting our citizens are in fact doing such and not abusing citizens or on the other side of the law. And I also look forward to, and I think this is something that should be raised, and I think the Attorney General has hinted to it, but there should be stringent measures, very strict penalties for those who hold the badges of law enforcement officers who decide that they're going to abuse that and step out, step on the other side of the line.
All right, we have to take a break. When we come back, I want to follow up on this point because that's a good issue that you raise. That situation with regards to if you doubt the police or not really hinges on the accountability and transparency of the service that people could have, so that people have confidence in their police officers. Yeah. But there's a wider question that's born from that one point. But we'll get to that after this. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome to ASTI, Advanced Solutions Technical Institute. We offer hands-on training in drone technology, fiber optics, hybrid, security, business support, and more. Our programs are built to equip you with real-world skills for today's evolving industries. Get certified, get hired, and take your career to the next level with ASTI. Call 778-2135 or email info@astitnt.com. ASTI, where learning meets opportunity.
KDM Health Limited says, test yourself for STDs in the privacy of your own home. Our self-help test kits for all STDs are available at our wholesale office in Chaguanas. Call 283-1423, visit our website at www.kdmhealtht.com or email us at kdmhealthlimited@gmail.com to place your orders. Available at all health institutions and pharmacies. Contact us for a free list of products and prices.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
I'm back here and talk about WSN, the content capital. Allow me to reintroduce myself because I'm not sure if I did so at the top of the show. Sean Michael Smallhead, joined by geopolitical analyst Dr. Shane Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed is now speaking about the fact when I asked him about Minister Stage's comments, part of the issue is that, hey, things need to be better with regards to the police service so that people will not necessarily doubt their identity or have reasonable cause to doubt their identity. And that brought up the question of accountability. But Dr. Mohammed, I want to take it a little bit wider. To some extent, we could put CPEP and URP kind of overall into this, generally speaking, but I don't necessarily want to speak to that specifically because I think the public service, you have an accountability problem across the board. It's one of those things where it seems like various administrations, the problem is so big, where do you start and are you willing to potentially do something unpopular with a lot of the public servants, because there's always seems to be pushback in various different ways when you try to change their job description, let me put it that way, right? Change how they do things and how their department or division runs and operates. But we've reached the point where I think most people would think it's ridiculous now, the lack of accountability and how things just seemingly are done willy-nilly with, you know, the inmates running the asylum. It's an analogy, it's a saying, I'm not saying that literally. So, Dr. Mohammed, what do you think about it? Because it might be a long process. Will the population give the government the patience if the government shows, hey, we're trying to treat with it in good faith? Because the last thing I think I would want is for any government to try to rush a solution, half-baked, to deal with something like this.
Well, the thing about it is, for years, there are several papers in public sector management. There are several papers that have been written about the public service. And there is an admission that we are in need of public service reform. There's serious need for us to reassess the current organization and the current structure, because from a technical perspective, we're operating under a hybrid of Weber's bureaucracy and Christopher Hood's new public management. Weber's bureaucracy is rigid. I accept that. And it's necessary to be rigid. It needs to be rigid for the purposes of transparency and accountability. And there are the public service rules and regulations are there to serve the purpose of safeguarding the welfare of the public servants as well as those they serve, which are we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and safeguarding the measures by which we conduct business. Now, it's very easy to say that persons are corrupt and persons are not doing their jobs. The service, as it is under Weber's bureaucracy, as it pertains to accountability and transparency, re-procurement is very strict in terms of accountability, because accounting officers, and many people do not know this, but the accounting officers who are permanent secretaries, the accounting officers are the permanent secretaries, and in the instance of the police service, it is the commissioner of police, and in statutory authorities, it can be the executive officer or whatnot. But the accounting officers of the public service entities are held accountable by law, to the point where if monies are spent and mismanaged by a ministry or state entity and cannot be accounted for, and evidence has been gathered and audits show that monies have been expended and cannot be accounted for by the accounting officer, there are measures in place to keep the to have the accounting officer be held accountable, which can expand and extend to freezing their assets, seizing their assets, suspension, so it's very strict. Now, the Christopher Hood's aspect of it brought into the public sector that aspect of contract officers, because the Weber's bureaucracy did not allow for specialist positions, so monitoring and evaluation, finance, audit, IT, communications. Those roles are contracts because it did not form part of the original Weber's bureaucracy. The hybrid that we have in Trinidad and Tobago now, since 1991, is a little bit outdated. So there's a new aspect of new public management. So that is in existence. There are aspects I would like to see, and somebody might say, well, this is where the Integrity in Public Life Act comes into play. But I think in order for us to have more accountability from the perspective of a minister, because there's something called the dichotomy of public administration, where the minister is responsible for policy creation, the administrator, the public servant is responsible for public administration of public policy, the effective of public policy. Where there's collusion, and don't for a second believe that there cannot be collusion between a permanent secretary and a minister, then the minister is equally culpable, but the law does not allow for it, because under the public sector rules and regulations. And therefore, that is something I think is very critical to a modern public sector in Trinidad and Tobago, so that it's not only the minister, the officer, or the permanent secretary who is accountable, it is also the minister where he crosses that dichotomy line and seeks to get his way through bullying, through deal making and whatnot. Because it's not that the answers are not there. A lot of times questions are asked, well, why it is the minister is not held accountable? Because it is not the minister's signature. And quite often, if a minister is doing something wrong, the permanent secretary has a remit where she can report the minister to the head of the public service or to the prime minister, as the case may be. But very little can be done. He might be fired. He might be moved around. He may, that is as far as we can go. Because we have a 3/5 majority, I think it is going to be important and critical for the legacy train that the Honorable Prime Minister is on, that it should not only be about delivery of service, and it should not just be about rooting out the criminal elements within systems like URP and CPEP, but it should also be a holistic approach that we go to the governance level, where even in the public service, there's public sector reform. And for years, public officers and public servants have had this notion that public sector reform is equal to restructuring and losing jobs. It is not about that. There are people who have been in the public service for many, many, many years. They've taken leave, they've taken no pay leave. As a result of their leaves, their secondment, they're moving on. They have retained that role in the public service for 10, 5, 15 years. And they become a block because the role has someone in it, and the person who's next in line is acting, and then everybody else thereafter is acting as if we're in Hollywood or Bollywood. And I've heard the Prime Minister says that where there are vacancies and where persons are acting, it is time to stop the acting and start appointing people. It is something I say yes to, as urgent as it is urgent, because it is going to engender public trust and confidence. It is going to be, from an HR perspective, it is going to be a sense of motivation. It is going to impart upon those that are serving that there's a sense of appreciation, that there's a sense of understanding of what happens. It will speak to regulating salaries and regularizing salaries and all of those, everything that comes with the role that one needs to execute. And where people are motivated and where they are properly remunerated, I'm not saying, note that I'm saying that I understand that there is negotiations for salaries going on, but I think we should start moving from to a point where salaries are a lot more standardized and aligned to qualifications and roles and responsibilities, very much like a private sector, so that we can get the effectiveness and the best out of the public service that we need. Because we all, if we don't know by now, the dragging, and it's happened in Malaysia, right? There's a Malaysian model. Everybody talks about the Singaporean model, but the Malaysian model of the public sector and bureaucracy tells us exactly what I'm saying. Where it is corrupt, where it is demotivated, where it is uninspiring, where people feel as if they are not properly remunerated, the public sector, the public sector becomes which is the main source of how we do business in this country. It could be the downfall of our economy and the frustrating of public policy and projects and so forth. So therefore, I think in this dispensation, within the next 400, how many days is that? Within the next 4 years and counting, we have the potential to do what is necessary from a holistic perspective. And to answer the question, the short of the answer is that, but I needed to give the explanation why. The short of the answer is yes, where there's progress, where there's reform, there's going to be need for persons to have patience in that regard, because we need to get it right. And we should not have to come back with an amendment of an amendment of an amendment of an amendment. That is really not where we want, that legacy we want. We should be able to get it right so that when it's implemented, it hits the ground running.
I'll just, before I go on to the next point, I just want to add, just like they had ghost gangs in CPEP and URP, allegedly, we have ghost employees. And any public sector reform, in my opinion, should do something about the ghost employees. So, and
yeah,
I have an issue with unions that want to protect ghost employees, because to some extent, that's the implication. Not all of them, but unfortunately, Mr. Elder is no longer a union leader. He is a member of cabinet. So I'm not entirely sure the new leadership of the CWU, how that will pan out with him not there, right? But I just wanted to, one last point before I move on, maybe to look more to the future. There's this phenomenon, of course, and maybe if we have time, you could speak about it from the opposition side. But the opposition is starting to criticize the government, and it's kind of crazy because it's like, but you were the cause for a lot of the things you're complaining about. Now, not necessarily focusing on them. The flip side is this. To some extent, like with regards to WASA, I see Minister Parra trying to say, look at what we've done, and I'm like, hold on. Maybe if you want us to acknowledge that the opposition is complaining about the results of their own labor, because we haven't been far enough removed from when they were in power. I find it hard to believe that in 3 months, you know, you want us to think, oh, well, we are solely responsible for these projects. Yes, it's under your stewardship that they were finished, but you kind of run the risk now that we can't have it both ways. We can't look at the opposition and criticize them, but then say, but look at what, because the Prime Minister said the murder rate is down, but it's interesting, one, the TTPS has not revealed crime statistics for the year, which is, usually they might be a couple months behind, but they haven't done it for the year, which makes me think even from before, with the SOE at the start of the year, for whatever reason, whoever's job it was to update the website, maybe they were told not to do it. But to some extent, you can't necessarily take credit for the murder rate being down and not acknowledge the fact that before, the murder rate was kind of trending downwards coming out of the last SOE. I find the two SOEs to be relatively similar in a general sense. The potential benefits of them, the potential effects of them that we see in general crime statistics. And I find it very interesting that both sides are trying to say our SOE is better when they're not necessarily that different. And the current administration runs the risk where if you try to take too much credit for the things that happened so early in the game, when all the analysts are saying it's too soon to judge the government, then it kind of, there's a disconnect then if you want to still look at the opposition and say, stop trying to blame the current government for the schools in your district, former Minister of Education, when you were the former Minister of Education.
Now, the thing about it is this, right? I said this yesterday, and I'll say this again today, that context is very important to craft the right argument or a compelling argument. And the question I was asked was that several quarters said that in the last SOE, persons called it an act of desperation. And I had to interject and say, well, one of those persons was myself. And I saw it as an act of desperation because it came at a time when the former administration was looking towards a general election. Crime had spiraled, home invasions, car theft. I mean, things that we never thought that we would have heard about: petty theft, car theft, kidnapping for ransom, you name it, gangs. And when in a small island like the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, there's a car theft ring, then it says that measures and surveillance and policing, something is wrong with it. Compelled by a bacchanal and a confusion within the police service regarding the police commissioner did make a compelling case for the former administration that they had control of things and that their governance had reached the bottom of the barrel. And I don't believe that this SOE was a pre-planned SOE. And there are those that are arguing with me on social media, and I don't care at this stage because they were not, some people clearly were not around, and they haven't read the history books, and they haven't read the testimonies. They've not had to sit down like I did with Mr. Dukaran to understand fully what the effects of 1990 had on Trinidad and Tobago, what it did to the members of that government and members of parliament, how it came about, and it's a learning lesson where communication from government to people is very important, and that's something that the last administration completely and cataclysmically collapsed upon. So therefore, and I don't also expect, because we are supposed to be, and we boast ourselves of being a brilliant group of people. Our nation, one of the strong, and I have boasted about this to foreign entities, that one of the greatest assets of Trinidad and Tobago is human capital, because we're supposed to be very ambitious, very driven, determined, bright people. And part of being bright, determined, driven people is that we are well researched. Something and some things in the governance structure as it pertains to national security and the security of our people and intelligence gathering cannot be made public. We cannot expect that the Attorney General and the Minister of National Security, well, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Homeland Security, the Commissioner of Police to come out and say X, Y, and Z, A, B, C, D, E. Read between the lines. And if you can't read between the lines, wait for the answers that is in your head to come, because there are some questions that cannot be publicly answered from an intelligence perspective. And I'm not holding a brief for him, but people like Gary Griffith and my colleague Garvin Hira and others who are specialists in security will tell you that. So something has had to have been triggered for, out of the blue, a brand new government come into office, and the first part of their quote-unquote legacy is a state of emergency that does not carry a weight of results. That is madness. And I don't believe that last night, what was articulated by the Prime Minister, what was articulated by the Prime Minister when she has done postcard meetings, what was articulated by the Prime Minister at her swearing in as Prime Minister, and then continued upon when she was sworn in, when she swore in her cabinet. I don't think that she has minced her words. I don't think there's anything that is nuanced that has left for us to wonder what exactly is she saying. And there are some things that, from a political perspective, she cannot say. It is to be said, and whoever's cap it fits, so be it. Right? So, as it pertains to the comparing of my SOE is better than your SOE, I don't think anybody could compare that my SOE is better than your SOE. I think the context, the circumstances by which both SOEs have been called are vastly different. And I would challenge the PNM and the former Prime Minister, who does not seem to understand what the word retirement means. I would challenge them to tell us what exactly caused you to have a state of emergency at the 11th, at the 23rd hour, in the 24-hour day, coming down to the end of their term. And where are the results of that? Because I don't believe you even reported on it during your campaign. It's as if it was a dash to try to realign a train that had already been derailed and was on the road to crashing. And it was a desperate attempt on the part of the former administration to woo the voters who had already gone had already had lost their cool, and they were overly frustrated by the governance structure. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you know this. We did the show in Tobago, but I will say it again. I was told the other day when I was in Tobago that the country has been suffering from abuse of the Rowley administration because we were dealing with a prime minister that had an inferiority complex that he clearly did not get over, even in the extension of his role as Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That he felt it was only necessary for him to have a conversation with the people of Trinidad and Tobago if he was shouting from the rooftop and speaking down to us as if we were some sort of a schoolyard of indisciplined children. But that frustration did not, and that approach did not give us good governance. It did not give us good leadership. It caused more governance confusion. Stuart Young could beat his chest 100 times, like Tarzan, saying that this is what we did, this government is benefiting from what we did, and we did this, and we, nobody cares. The country doesn't, and I'm going to sound very biased, but sometimes we need to, as analysts, we also need to be real. Nobody cares. The same way Shampa said nobody lives there, the country is now saying nobody cares. Because the frustration that you unleveled, the frustration that you leveled against the people of this country, the lack of prosperity that you unleashed on this country, the lack of opportunity that chained our young people, the lack of a life, a good life that people aspire for as citizens, you drove them out of the country. It was one of the periods when the largest amount of emigration out of Trinidad and Tobago took place. People ran to opportunities wherever it came. Ask Karen Rose, he went to Thailand.
Dr. Mohammed, I need to stop you there because I do want to move on before we run out of time. But I will say this, I agree with you. As someone who is concerned that the government is maybe, I already said, be careful how much credit you try to take. The flip side is this, regardless of if those WASH initiatives did come from under Marvin Gonzalez, you are right, nobody cares. They lost. It doesn't, even if there's positive benefits of holdover projects, they lost. There's no winning for the opposition on that front in my mind either. But wanting to move on, because the Prime Minister did mention that we're looking to get ExxonMobil to return to TNT, have some new deep water contracts, maybe $16 to $24 billion in foreign investment in energy exploration. Now, all of the analysts, both before and after the meeting last night, I think have been basically saying the same thing. It's been an awkward time for the current government. They've been having to operate under a PNM budget, and they had essentially, not too long after the election, the period when Parliament basically kind of goes on break, right? And now we have an upcoming budget coming up. This is maybe the first really, truly big indicator what their agenda will be for the year, what the legislative agenda might be for the next few months at the very least, and how that will set up the rest of the administration. Looking towards the future now, what do you anticipate? Because the one thing with hopefully the good news, if it comes to fruition, as the Prime Minister said with regards to the energy sector, that might be some time off in the future, and unfortunately, they still have to deal with the now.
So, okay. One, I think Trinidadians need to stop the madness on the road. Because, yes, the Prime Minister has, and the government has taken the decision with regard to the demerit point system. And it may have been frustrating and unfair to those that are, to road users and drivers. But for God's sake, there's still a law, there's still a rule that tells us that we should not be drinking and driving. And you can be charged for drinking and driving, those idiots that are on the road causing the deaths of people, right? That's one. So while there's no demerit points, there's still a charge for driving under the influence.
I think the demerit points still stand because they haven't actually gone through the negative resolution to remove it yet.
Very well. So then, for those people who don't know, you still have to deal with the demerit points. The Minister of Transport.
And drunk driving, I believe you would still have demerit points even.
Okay, well, there we go, right? So then, what is going on with the people that have suddenly gone mad that believe that the road is a racetrack?
That is very true.
Right? So they chill out on that. You've been given a driver's license. You are a mature individual. Yes, I understand people like to party and that kind of thing. But think about what happens when you're drunk and you're driving and you're racing. You're not causing yourself and the people in your vehicle harm. You're harming other innocent people that are minding their own business, trying to get from point A to point B. And then if you do cause an accident and you're dead, you are causing an unnecessary level, unnecessary level of emotional trauma to the families that are going to be grieving as a result of your slackness. So Trinidad, relax on yourself. Tobago, relax on yourself on this one, right? That's the first thing. Not because the government has taken an approach that comes across as lenient means that it is a free-for-all. There's something that is going to come thereafter that you may not like. I don't think you want to know you have to go back to school to learn to drive because there's a program coming as articulated by the Minister of Transport about that aspect of it, that you have to go back to school to go back and learn to drive and to take a training course and a certification that says that you don't need to be a crazy man or a crazy woman on the road. That's the first one. I do think that I'm waiting to see whether or not, and I'm very curious because he seems to appear anytime there's something energy-like. And I'm also very irked by the fact that the media still refers to him as former Prime Minister because I can't imagine that a man you see, we should have also, this is going to sound bad and it's going to sound very biased and I also don't care. You serve for 42 days and you carry the title of former Prime Minister. And under your tenure as a former Prime Minister, there's zero achievements. Your achievement is the reshuffling of cabinet, the collapse of a cabinet, and the calling of an election. That's your achievements. Those are the three things under your tenure as a former Prime Minister. You're not even worthy of the title former Prime Minister. Take Minister of Energy and former Minister of National Security. But I'm waiting to see when that signing takes place today. Stuart Young is going to awaken from his vacation, and he's going to say, we did that too. We had that in look, you see that? We all know that the relationship between the United States and Trinidad and Tobago under the Rowley / sidekick Stuart Young administration was frigid. It did not bear us any sense of esteem. We were not seen as respected. And if anybody doesn't believe that, then the record would show for itself, right? I look forward to economic diversification. I want to see diversification as an action word, as a verb and not a noun or an adjective. I think we have a lot of economic minds. We have a lot of brilliant minds in Trinidad and Tobago. And within the periphery and the core of the United National Congress, and listening to the Prime Minister say last night that that there were persons that worked hard, that are loyalists to the party and that were loyal and they did the work that was needed for the party to win and they should be rewarded. I look forward to that happening because that's what winning in the election. I mean, let me tell you, I'm very happy to see a diversified government. I believe that the Attorney General was an excellent choice. He knows he's an experienced man. He knows what he's doing. I accept that he has the respect and not only the respect, but the confidence of the Prime Minister. I think when I compare the 2010 to 2015 period compared to now, there's a huge difference in that dispensation and that relationship. And I think that the Attorney General, given the historical relationship with the Prime Minister in the past, is going to do what is necessary to take us to our next level of governance. And I think, just as I said before the election, that Trinidad and Tobago is at a crossroads between poverty and prosperity. I believe that having gained the mandate of a 3/5 majority, I look forward to the autonomy of Tobago. I want to see that happen. I believe that the illegal mines in the Tobago space, married with illegal mines in the government, can provide Tobago with a paper and a bill that provides Tobago with the opportunity and the direction and the authority it requires in order to drive its course and to bring into the island and to the nation, by extension, the prosperity and the goals and aspirations of the Tobagonian people. That's one. That's another one. I do want to see, beyond energy, I want to see that we can, expand, that the e-tech parks are there, the Special Economic Zones Authority is there, and a collaboration of the Manufacturing Association, the Ministry of Trade, the Special Economic Zones Authority, and the e-tech parks can bring to us a level of prosperity, creativity, and innovation that we've never seen before. And this is our time to take advantage of the collectiveness, the collectivity of what of the entities I just spoke of. So, and she said it last night, Trinidad and Tobago is open for business. Let's go there and find the business and bring it home to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And this is going to sound bad because I never thought I would say it, but maybe we just need to utilize temporarily until we find one of our own, use the leadership of Kamala Prasad-Bissessar to make Trinidad and Tobago great again.
I mean, listen, I know that statement, there's a lot of subliminals in that statement, right? There's a lot of meta context in that statement. For those who understand us, I would like to say, I don't think Shane was looking to go in all of them. I don't think he meant to hit all of them, right? I think it was a literal statement, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We'll just, it's been 100 days of the new government. The new government has two sides, so we'll just briefly touch on the other side and then open the phone line. Stay tuned.
KDM Health Limited says, test yourself for STDs in the privacy of your own home. Our self-help test kits for all STDs are available at our wholesale office in Chaguanas. Call 283-1423. Visit our website at www.kdmhealtht.com or email us at kdmhealthlimited@gmail.com to place your orders. Available at all health institutions and pharmacies. Contact us for a free list of products and prices.
Welcome to ASTI, Advanced Solutions Technical Institute. We offer hands-on training in drone technology, fiber optics, hybrid, security, business support, and more. Our programs are built to equip you with real-world skills for today's evolving industries. Get certified, get hired, and take your career to the next level with ASTI. Call 778-2135 or email info@astitnt.com. ASTI, where learning meets opportunity.
Struggling with heart health or frequent migraines? Discover the simple steps to reclaim your energy and vitality.
We're diving into a topic that affects about 422 million people around the world: diabetes.
Tune into Wellness Unlocked, the series that delivers expert advice, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and well-being. Your health matters. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
I'm back here to talk about on WSND Connect Capital. Just before we open the phone lines, one of the things that we seem to forget is the opposition technically is part of government too. And one of the things that I take great, I guess, even though I am an amateur, Dr. Mohammed is the professional. He is the true academic with regards to political science. I am the amateur observer. But to some extent, it is an academic interest. I don't have any bias with regards to the PNM, but I do find this stage of the life of that party to be interesting because I'm not entirely sure if they are necessarily taking the defeat very well. It seems as though the last go-around when a similar defeat happened, they kind of had a good head on their shoulders, relatively speaking, and knew what to do. Whereas now, we get what we get. Dr. Mohammed, 100 days in opposition. What do you make of Kamala Persad-Bissessa's, there's a term that I really want to use, but it might come across as too sarcastic, her political opponents right now? Because I guess, let me say it this way. It seems as though she has a substitute opposition.
Well,
like a substitute teacher of an opposition.
So let's ask a very hard and maybe insulting question. And it is not insulting. I'm not insulting the opposition leader by any means, but I have a question for the People's National Movement. Have you figured out who your leader is? Because I think that's a very critical thing that they need to understand. We need to first, I as an academic as well, I need to ascertain, has the People's National Movement, can they definitely say who their leader is? Because I'm having difficulty wondering whether there are three leaders within the party. Because, or whether one has been pushed aside because he lost an election, or he was a proxy or a puppet on a stick for someone else. But I don't understand, why is it the word retirement? I mean, we've had prime ministers retire before. We had Mr. Robinson retired. We had Mr. Pandey retired. And I don't recall in those two, especially those, and Mr. Manning retired, I don't recall that at every single opportunity that those three gentlemen put forward themselves on the national landscape, forced themselves onto the national landscape for something that none of us seem to care about. I mean, yes, you have a diplomatic passport, you were stopped at an airport. The Prime Minister of that country says, you are not on any list. The Prime Minister of this country is saying, well, you are not on any list. It's a standard operating procedure. I've had a situation. Dr. Fuad Khan, as a Minister of Government, was stopped at an airport in Miami because of his name. And you could ask him, I was there. And that happened. So if it could happen to a sitting Minister of Government, who are you as a Prime Minister? And Dr. Khan was using a diplomatic passport at the time. So I don't understand why the necessary drama. Why, if you chose the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, when he was Prime Minister, told this country that for reasons aligned to his wife and his children and his grandchildren and his familial ties and his goats in Tobago and his peacocks that were getting bunks in the road, that he needed to retire and, you know, deal with family life. Retirement is dealing with family life and not, you think Trinidad and Tobago, again, nobody cares that he was stopped in the airport. That's one.
To be quick on this, just to touch on that, does it almost seem as though he didn't really want to retire? And maybe
no, I don't know what he feels. I think he did not want to lose. That's what he did not want. He did not want to lose a general election.
But
and therefore he chose to run away from losing the election.
So it makes me think he didn't want to lose, right? And because of that, he avoided what was the potential defeat. Now, but here's the other thing. Yes, I understand there's the current leader, there's Stuart Young, a former, who she called a leader, even though he was never a political leader. One of her initial statements, she included him in the lineup of former political leaders, right? And then the reports in the newspapers omitted his name. I don't know if she asked for correction, or if the papers edited that themselves. And of course, there's Dr. Rowley. But to me, I think even within, forget Stuart Young and Dr. Rowley, even with other people who are very public in the PNM, it seems as though, I'm not sure if Penelope Beckles is the actual leader. The process might say she's the leader. They might tell her she's the leader. The membership might think she's the leader. But the actual party internal politics, I am not entirely sure. I will say this, her picks of deputy political leader were interesting to me, particularly of Baptiste Primus, who is the only person in that party executive publicly that could say, I am not tarnished with the nonsense that happened with that transfer of power that you're trying to come across with.
I agree with you. And even when that happened, I did indicate that I don't have a problem. In fact, I understand why Mr. Imbert is a deputy political leader. I understand that there needs to be diversification. I find that there are other prominent persons in the party that could have been a deputy leader. Again, I have no issue with Sanjay Buru. I don't know the gentleman. He was quite eloquent. He was quite, charismatic on the trail. His social media platforms and whatnot was quite engaging. It was less arrogant than Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal, who was atrocious, and tasteless. But I don't know that Mrs. Baptiste Primus, in her efforts to fight for the moorings of the party, the foundations of the party, she did it looking for a role as a deputy political leader. And I do believe that she could have been equally effective, and I said this, I'll say it now, as an advisor to the council and an advisor to the executive. But my choice for the deputy political leader was Laurel Lazama. And I think Laurel deserves to be given the opportunity to serve the party at that level of leadership, because Laurel Lazama represents a foundation of the PNM that has been lost over time. The humility, the communication, the engagement, the kindness, the service, the connection with persons, the recognition of talent, and the recognition of value in people beyond political or non-political persuasions is all Laurel Lazama. And I can say that because I have seen and experienced that. So that is who I would have put as a deputy political leader, to be able to effectively chart a way forward for the PNM. I'm sorry to say, the PNM is lost. The PNM is a lost herd of 13 persons who aren't sure which direction they're going in. And a lot of the questions that are posed to the PNM as a collective, and even to the leader of the PNM, unfortunately, is what did you do and how did you stand up against the atrocities of the former administration, and what evidence is there that you stood up against it, even within the cabinet? And that's all you need to say.
But Dr. Ahmed, I have to ask, because when this came up, and maybe, of course, it was a lot earlier than after the election, you weren't necessarily ready to be this decisive on the PNM just yet. I was, and maybe I was jumping the gun, or maybe I saw something. I don't know. But it's interesting
because I think we need to give people, and the reason for that is because we need to give persons who are stepping into leadership. And that is what Mrs. Beckles Robinson was doing. She was stepping into leadership, and she was taking over the reins, and there needed to be an alignment. You see, when there are ills of a government, and let's be real, if we don't know it by now, we're living under a rock. The past administration was bad. They were failing. They failed. They collapsed. The country rejected them. I think there are several times when this country rejected an administration. They rejected the PNM in 1986. They rejected the PNM in 2010, and they rejected the PNM in 2025. Those are 3 historical periods, and every single time they were rejected, a constitutional majority was handed to the incoming government. It happens that one prime minister has gotten it twice. One mistake, and it said last night, one mistake made once is not going to be made a second time. And if for once this opposition, somebody could get up and say, beyond that, things fell apart. There were ills of the government. We lost. No, we don't want to hear that. We know, the country knows that the PNM lost it. Well, the country is aware that the governance of this country collapsed.
Ironically,
what I would like to know, just before we shift, what I think we would want to know is what role did you play as members of that government? What roles did you play in defending the democracy of this nation, the democracy of your party, and the rights of the people of Trinidad and Tobago? What role did you play? And if the answer to that, you can't give the answer to that directly, man, nobody wants to hear about you either.
I think a lot of it is casualties of the internal politics of the PNM, where they successfully hit it, but it doesn't mean that they don't have to suffer the consequences of how they conduct their business. I will say, first of all, I don't think Penelope Beckles, as much as I didn't care that she's not a rah-rah politician, this is part of the downfall of that. I don't think she's going to be the one to fiery and decisively say, these are the problems.
But and there's a but, though. There's a but. There's a but right now that I'm having a difficulty with. And the but that I'm having a difficulty with is, what is the chaos? I read her statement about the 100. Where's the chaos? Where's the confusion?
Yeah.
What we have is a government that went in to investigate. What we have is a government that went in to determine. A government that went in to assess and ascertain what was, what is, what can be, what... If it is that the Prime Minister is saying that, listen, CPEP just wasn't doing, CPEP and URP evolved into something that it cannot be sustainable for the good of the nation and for the prosperity of our people and for their welfare, and 10 days is not a job, then the government of the day has a responsibility to do what it needs to do to fix it. My thing is, in the interest of the people that require or depended on CPAP and URP as a source of income to execute their daily living, we need to treat with it urgently. And while I do understand that there is unraveling to be done, I would like to see that any new entity or new version of CPEP that emerges is sustainable. It is beyond 10 days, because we cannot be a country, as the Prime Minister rightfully said, and you know what? Sometimes some people need, the right people need to say it because it will not come across as offensive. But no, we cannot be harboring a country of grass cutters and just people that work in the morning for 4 hours and then they go. No, we need productivity in a different manner. In fact, Dr. Indira Sajiwan said it before. I will say it now. Others have said it. CPEP and URP could go beyond just simply 10 days. We could invest in agriculture, in labor, in the agriculture sector. But I have been championing, we need to have a hybrid economy of agrarianism and industrialization. It worked before. It is working in other nations. Jamaica is seeing the prosperity of it. Guyana is seeing the prosperity of it. The Philippines is seeing the prosperity of it. And India is seeing the prosperity of it. Why can't we do it again?
We have a call, but I just want to say maybe they were so concerned about having enough grass cutters because former Prime Minister Rowley, you know that he needs to ensure that the golf courses are all have their grass cut. So
I wish that there was somebody need to give former Prime Minister Rowley a grass cutter and direct him to a golf course so that he's not making papers talking a fucking nonsense.
I think the sarcasm, I can't go as fully sarcastic as I always like, because that's referencing something that's a little...
I know.
Okay, thank you. Once you know, we have to go Martin on the line. Good morning, calling on here.
Good morning, sure, and good morning, Dr. Mohammed. A couple of passing... he's an expert in cutting grass and mowing lawn, you know, and golf course, you know. So,
yes!
So
he said so publicly
expertise.
A few years ago.
Right. A direct question to you. Dr. Mohammed, I see you're batting for Lizama, the young lady, was she a student of yours? Okay. My real discussion now is 100 days of the PNM. Minister Padarat has said it easily, has said it and it makes sense. PIP, pennies in pajamas, the PNM in pajamas, they are sleeping. I am seeing the opposition raising an issue for steel ban and pan playing in all schools. I am seeing that with the president of Pan Trinbago. I want them to revisit 2010-2015. I want them to visit the CAC, Continuous Assessment VAPA. All schools were given the opportunity to have a pan side and a number of pans in the school. Rip Van Winkle, Mr. Garcia, shut it down. So what they're thinking about happened long time. I will tell you, Shoguana's government primary school in 2011, the only school to get 1, 2, 3, had a building built for playing music, and they had a whole orchestra of pan brought into the school. And when people here in Shoguana's school, government have a thing, and a lot of the secondary schools, and you know what the Minister Garcia did? The people who were teaching spans, those educators who were teaching music, he shut it down. He said the government couldn't afford it. You don't have to have a pan player, just show them how to read music. The instrument is there and they will know the notes. It's just like you teach them about music, the curriculum, they could play a guitar, they could play the saxophone, they know the notes. So that is why they are sleeping in pajamas. But the more critical thing, and I'm going to the press now, if what I'm hearing on what the Honorable Prime Minister said yesterday about the first gentleman might have an allegation, be engaged in benefiting from legal briefs from taxpayers' money. And there was one instance where she identified 43 million spent on one legal matter of NGC. Then the president has to tell us if that is part of the gospel of the PNM. Because the gospel of the PNM, I have to say, is the mantra of O'Halloran. Plain and simple. She has to come out and show us integrity. You can't be wasting taxpayers' money with a set of eat-a-food lawyers who benefiting at the expense. You know how much wakada could I buy? I'll go and have a good day.
Caller, thanks for that, because it's only now that I'm remembering former AG Reginald Moore had a poor excuse with regards to not wanting to disclose the amount of money paid to lawyers by the states. So this is just chickens coming home to roost. Now, what the caller said, Dr. Mohammed, made me think, first of all, I dislike the phrase penny in pajamas, but the point the caller made a lot of sense, right? I can't remember if Minister Padarath, when he said the statement, this was the point he was trying to make. That, what is the point of calling for these things now? You were there. You were part of the previous administration. You asked the question, what part of trying to push back? Because I give Dr. Rowley credit, whether he was correct or not, whether Mr. Manning was in the wrong or not. He pushed back publicly against Mr. Manning. Therefore, when he assumed the mantle of leadership, he was effectively a clean slate, right? He didn't have to carry the baggage of his predecessor. But because Penelope Beckles is not willing to decisively make statements, this is why things went wrong. This is why I disagreed. This is why it was wrong. She has to deal with the consequences of the guilt by association. She's dealing with the negative consequences of her predecessors.
I agree 100% with you. I mean, the bottom line is this. There's a difference between, and if people don't understand it, it is very clear. There's a difference between power. There's a difference between power, government, and governance. And what the PNM was interested in maintaining was power. And power, not for the purpose of governing and governance, it was for the purpose of government. And because that's what their legacy is. And I want to know, and the caller made a very, very good point about VAPA and PAN in schools. When we go to, let's just use one example, junior panorama competition. When we go to junior panorama competition, right? Who are competing? Not schools?
Yeah.
When we go to that specific competition, are they not competing? Did we not have in the visit of Prime Minister Modi a steel pan orchestra from QRC?
It was Providence QRC, their steel pan. We had them on Breakthrough yesterday, and I think the conversation was going along the lines of where you were going, the importance to our education system for these types of initiatives, to our society for these types of initiatives.
Exactly. So I don't understand what the issue is with regard to PAN in schools, because as far as I know, PAN in schools has happening across the country, and it is successfully so. Why can the opposition leader explain to us why the Minister of Education is seeking to fill over 100 vacancies for technical vocational teachers, over 80-something principals who have been acting, secondary schools that have been out of teachers for however long, primary schools that have been out of T1 teachers for so long, to the point where the Ministry of Education has taken the responsibility to do the employment in time for September, while the lagging Teacher Service Commission, gets their act in order. I think the Prime Minister and the President said it collectively, but I think the time has come for us to seriously ascertain and reassess the roles and responsibilities of the service commissions and their effectiveness in a modern governing system. Next year will be 50 years since republicanism. And I would like to see, as a major achievement of this administration, significant amendments to our constitution or to our governing frameworks as we get ready to the 50th anniversary of republicanism. Because 50 years is the lifespan of some people. People are going to be turning 50 next year. There's a generation of persons that this country has gained, and there's that it says to us that in the last 50 years we have not significantly upped our game and our levels of prosperity and competitiveness because of short-sightedness. And there are countries that have come from behind us and are surpassing us. And I'm sorry, the patriot in me is saying that should not be.
Well, we're also going to lose the living memory of people who lived through those transitions and fully understood directly what they mean. And I shudder to think what will happen if the living memory is lost, how we will...
Well, Sean, if it is that people can't simply understand the significance and the detriment and the consequences of 1990, then God help us.
We have a caller from Arima on the line. Good morning, caller. You on there?
Morning.
Morning
to you and your guests.
Morning.
I want to try a spanner in the works this morning.
Sure.
Because what I'm saying so, right? My former principal, Mr. James Sammy, he taught us something called reflective praxis. And I saw it last night with Miss Prasad Bissessa. Yeah. She realized that the time that she had in the wilderness as opposition leader between 2015 and now, that it really wasn't what she wanted. And she understood why she ended up where she ended up. And the part of the statement that I liked last night is where she said, we're not having different people doing the same thing. No. They're putting country first. And if you don't really want to work and put country first, but you want to put yourself first, well, hard luck. Because as you all are rightfully speaking about the legal fees, when you look at some of the fees that is being paid, it's staggering. It really is. And it didn't start with the last administration. It happened during her time as well. Yeah. So she realized that her tenure wasn't sin-free. You know? When you look at Eden Gardens, Beetham Wastewater, and Life Sport and all these other things, it was rough. And today, you know, when you look at the country going forward, but my question I want to ask you all, the people who work in CPEF, Dr. Mohammed talk about agriculture, all right, fine. But we really need opportunities for the young people, because it's not young people that I see really doing CPEF, it's more middle-aged people. I'm serious about that. Because it is hard for a parent to sacrifice to send a child to school. They get a degree and all of these things, and they still sit down there waiting on a job, and they have all these vacancies. Economics drives everything. And I hope that with the potential oil that we're going to discover in those fields north of Starborough, that we put this money to use and really put this country on a good footing. And it's not that PNM lost their supporters, you know. PNM still have their supporters. But you can't support somebody whose main aim really is to impoverish you. No, you can't support that. But it still remains your party. And that's how the majority of us feel who didn't vote in the last election. Have a good day, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. I think
he used something that I teach to my MBA students, and it's a critical aspect, reflective practice. And the theory tells us that reflective practice yields successful entrepreneurs and stronger leaders. And I do agree with him that from all of her speeches, all of the major speeches of the Prime Minister, I mean, inauguration, swearing in of cabinet last night, I mean, major speeches, there's a sense of reflection and a reverting to that practice of reflection and the experiences that she's gone through, and understanding as well that with age comes wisdom. And there was I myself keep reflecting on it and listening to her, that it clearly was not easy. And it, you know, this time around, she's going to chart. And I said to another media house, I'll say it again to you, Sean, that what I'm looking forward to, we've had Thatcherism, we have had Reaganomics, we've had Trumpism, we've had all the different terms that we've coined to represent the legacies of great leaders in the world. I mean, we've in the Caribbean region, we have Panday, we have Dame Eugenia Charles, we have Jagan, we also have Hugo Chavez, Castro. All of these people make up the leadership ideologies of the region. And I'm looking forward to some of us, including myself at some point in time, having the opportunity and the distinction of coining what the legacy of this Kamla Prasad successor is going to be, and what is it going to be called. And it's something that I've started to explore already. But, you know, I agree with the caller with regard to employment of young people, and I think that's also a very important part of this governing structure. It's why she's talked about aligning people's, those who have done degrees as well as has gotten scholarships. I don't want us to see a scholarship winner who went away to be an actuary and did actuarial science, come back and be at a desk doing data entry at the Ministry of Public Administration. Then we didn't invest properly. And therefore, all of that, the system must align to the goals of the government and the goals of the Prime Minister as it pertains to aligning young people in the areas and the spheres in which they can be passionate. I look forward to seeing what the ministers of health are going to do to improve the health sector, not in the long term, but in the quickest possible way. Because you see, right now,
Shane, hold on. I have to cut you because we have Mr. San Fernando waiting for a while. So, Mr. San Fernando, good morning. You on there?
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Good morning, Dr. Mohammed.
Good morning, sir.
You hear me, Sean?
Yeah, we hear you. Morning,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes. I heard a lot of what Dr. Mohammed said. Some things I don't agree with, some things I do agree with. But I want to ask one question, Dr. Mohammed. I hope you could answer it to me. Where is Jayanti Lakshmidiyal Ramdiyal? I am surprised that I have not seen her on anywhere in this landscape of the UNC after all the work that she did in opposition, and a lot of good work, I must say, a lot of those joint select committees and stuff. Can you answer that to me? Where is she? Thank you.
Thank you,
I think she'll find. I think the answer to that lies with the head of the government, and it also one has to ask Ms. Lakshmidiyal Ramdiyal as well. Where does she want to be? I mean, I know in the last couple of months, she has a young baby. Sometimes goals does not always align, and we don't know the background, and therefore, I think we have to wait to see, because there are many parts of the government, the multi-level governance structure that I talk about, that has not been filled. So it could very well be that we will see the former senator in a role, but we have to wait for that decision to be made by the Prime Minister. And there are others, Ms. Lakshmidiyal Ramdiyal is not the only one. There are others as well that are very distinguished that I am looking forward to seeing have a role in government and who can contribute in a meaningful way to the governing structure and as we chart the way forward. So let's wait and see where Ms. Ramdiyal, Lakshmidiyal Ramdiyal will be. But there are others as well. It's not only her, and it's a matter of the Prime Minister finding the right people to fit in the right roles that will be most effective in achieving the goals that the Prime Minister wants to achieve.
I'll just say this. I think, and this goes beyond anything Shane and I have actually discussed now thinking about it, there are potential other considerations with regards to timing, political politics, internal politics, the timing of that, the timing of governance, the timing of the future of the party. Because of the current cabinet, I think the loss is not as stark as opposed to if it was just the opposition slate. Maybe some people might be like, oh, the absence, the hole is a lot bigger. I'm not necessarily too worried about it. I'm like Dr. Mohammed. I'm willing to give the government, hey, things now start, take your time, do it properly. I will say, though, that the couple of instances where I perceive the government rushing into things, then I can't also say that's fine as well. I much prefer when the government is taking their time and making sound decisions. Now, with that said, though, I want to go back to a point that we were speaking about with regards to the opposition leader, because I find the juxtaposition of the Prime Minister very interesting with what the conversation with the previous caller, I can't remember if it was Remo Digger Martin, and some of your comments, Dr. Mohammed, where Kamala, at least to some extent, I don't want to say, as an absolute 100% truth, but at least to some extent, she is speaking directly to her mistakes. She might not be pointing them out and listing them out, but when she says Kamala 2.0 is not Kamala version 1, we're not repeating the mistakes we made last time. She is not trying to disguise or hide or downplay or dismiss or what. No, nothing bad happened. Things were so great back then and we'll just be even greater now. That tends to be the norm of what politicians like to do. They don't want to bring up the negative stuff, but to some extent, not necessarily, like I said, giving out the details. She's saying mistakes were made, we ain't doing that again. And to me, she is, at least to some extent, successfully separating her current administration and her current self from her past self and her past administration. I mean, she was in charge then, but just because of taking things in front, she has, to some extent, successfully distanced herself from that and said enough to say, listen, believe in me because it's not going to be that. Whereas the current opposition leader, she's not doing it, so it's kind of hard for her to try to come from the same perspective, and I think people are doubting her because she is potentially going to be what we saw before, because she hasn't told us any different.
Because, Sean, we have to see things we tend to sometimes not see. And there are some things we can't talk about in politics. And you alluded to it just now with regard to the caller's comment on where is Jayanti Lakshmi, right? And politics is like a bowl. It's like a big bowl. It's deep. There are levels to it. And within what sometimes the population just sees what is at the surface. But when you go down into the deep ends of the bowl and the levels of the parties and the politics, there are things that sometimes we as or the general population does not understand, does not see. It could involve behaviors, attitudes, utterances, alignments, perspectives, cohesions, you name it. And those things sometimes could be consequential on one side of the thing, or it could be beneficial, or it could leave you in abeyance of both. It doesn't mean that because people are not there right now, that they will not be there at some point in time. Because as the Prime Minister said, she's still rolling out, right? Trying to ensure that state boards just aren't just filling, we're not just putting humans to fill state boards, but those people are going with a mandate to make us money, because then if you're not making money, then what is the purpose of your board, right? But another thing I want to say as it pertains to the Prime Minister talking about why she's 2.0 is going to be different from 1 is because the Prime Minister also, as a person, as political leader of the UNC, did not just lose government. Losing government was just part of it. She lost human capital. She lost loyalties. She lost friendships. She lost alignments. She lost honor. She lost. There was emotional loss as well, and there are many people that, good people, talented people, willing people, young people, who walked away out of the disappointment that they felt, the hurt that they felt, because forgiving Kamala forgave too many people for the wrong things, while the good people were left to wander. And it was only a realization that may have occurred after the fact. And it would have taken time and years for that level of goodwill to return, right? We don't, listen, running a political party and running an election is not just simply what you see in the surface and at the front line, but there are way more layers and roles in the back of persons that are providing human service, and they're not seen or not heard. And even people within the political party structure, on the executive and the campaign teams, as candidates, they don't see those persons either. And it could it turns out that an elite few see the energy, the resources, the commitment that goes into ensuring that a party wins, especially for a party like the UNC that was in the, I call it political wilderness for 10 years, because that is what it was, to emerge victorious. There's a lot of people and a lot of hard workers, a lot of people that was doing things in the background that are yet to see a reward. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't come. Sometimes, I remember in the first dispensation of the administration, it took up to 6 months to 9 months for persons to be called upon. So, people, it will happen for those that it requires to be happen, as it pertains as it aligns to the discretion, but also the the intelligence, the maturity, the governance, the vision of the Prime Minister. And I just want to come back to the PNM for a second.
Well,
I think that
go ahead.
even the PNM, there's not very much that they could stand on.
Well, hold on. I have a question.
Literally grasping for straws.
Let me focus the conversation on this question. This is the last question, and then we have to wrap. I just want to know, now the succession of the UNC is still, it hasn't come up, Kamala is still there, right? What comes after will come after. But with the PNM, I have to ask, has the succession situation been decided, or is Penelope Beckles a placeholder even if she lasts the entire term of this current government before the next election?
She will stay. She stabilizes the party. She brings stability to the party that it needs. I think the party needs to adjust to her leadership style. I think even she needs to be given an opportunity to figure out what her approach is going to be. She was not one of those to be a rah-rah-rah in government. I don't expect it to be in opposition. I feel in some instances she's forced to speak when she really doesn't want to speak because it's not worth speaking about. And it is to pacify those that want her to speak, but there's nothing to be said. And my advice to her would be authentic, be yourself. If there's nothing to say, then don't say it. And if you don't believe that there's a comment to be made, then don't comment. It is better to stand up and be authentic and let people see you who you are, as opposed to allow yourself. And she would probably say, I talking nonsense, she's not getting dictated by nobody. But sometimes the Penny Beckles that I am familiar with, if she doesn't think that she should say something, she's not going to say it. And there's nothing on the face of this earth will convince her to say otherwise. And if she doesn't have something of depth and of substance to say, she's not going to say anything. And she has to now craft that role as opposition leader to align with her personality and her leadership skill and her leadership approach and traits. And she must be able to articulate that to the people that want her to say something when she should really turn around and say, we can't say anything about it because we were part of the problem and we didn't do anything about it. So that is where the catch-22 that the PNM finds themselves in, that the very same people who are talking now were part of the problem and allowed something to fester and corrupt the ethos of the PNM for it to be where it is. And I don't know if they're anywhere close to finding their footing now and in the next 3 years.
Well, as we have to wrap, I'll just, based on what you said, I'll just support that with a point that I've said before and I'll reiterate. Only Dr. Keith Rowley could be Dr. Keith Rowley. And it seems like the party maybe wants her to act like that because that's what they know, it was recrafted in his image. But you're right. For her to be the best version of herself, she can't try to be someone else. She has to be herself. Look what it did to Stuart Young. He tried to be like his predecessor, and it didn't work out that well for him, or at least he tried to be more like his predecessor as opposed to just being Stuart Young. That's maybe unfortunate for Stuart Young. But with that said, thanks to the callers for calling, and thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for joining me once again and having this expansive long-form conversation. I'm actually kind of happy we could have long-form conversation on television. Usually those two things don't go together. But thanks for all of the insights and analysis and the willingness to talk.
We'll chat soon.
Okay, we'll speak again, don't worry. Folks, have a good day. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. And of course, you need to, whether you have political biases or not, support both sides of Parliament, because we actually should want both of them to do well. Therefore, we will all do well. Because when Parliament, both sides wins, then technically everybody would really be winning. However, with that said, it's nice to be nice. Even if you have differences with the person that you're speaking to, try to do so, try to express yourself respectfully so that we could have a constructive conversation in your everyday lives. That's how we could grow as a nation, one individual growing at a time. Until then, we will see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Welcome to ASTI, Advanced Solutions Technical Institute. We offer hands-on training in drone technology, fiber optics, hybrid, security, business support, and more. Our programs are built to equip you with real-world skills for today's evolving industries. Get certified, get hired, and take your career to the next level with ASTI. Call